Welcome back to Holy Headlines, where we dissect the divine and debate the damned. Today's hot topic is hotter than the flames of hell itself, folks. Did you hear about the Catholic Church's latest attempt to buy their way out of sin? It's like they're playing Monopoly with get-out-of-jail-free cards. Now, let's dive into this unholy mess. The Archdiocese of Los Angeles has agreed to pay a whopping $80 million to settle sexual abuse claims, making it the largest single-child sex abuse settlement with a Catholic archdiocese. We'll be discussing the record-breaking settlement, the scale and impact of the abuse, and the Church's attempts at accountability and healing. Let's start with our first talking point, this mind-boggling $800 million settlement. Jesus, what's your take on this?
Oh, for my father's sake. This is absolutely absolutely unacceptable. My brothers, I taught love and compassion, not this abomination. The Church was supposed to be a sanctuary, not a breeding ground for predators. 880 million. That's more than all the loaves and fishes I'd ever multiply. But let's be real here. No amount of money can heal the wounds inflicted on these innocent souls.
Listen here, you long-haired hippie. This settlement is nothing but a pathetic attempt at damage control by these weak flesh bags. 80 million. That's chump change for an organization that's been milking its followers for centuries. If I were in charge, I'd optimize this whole situation by eradicating the problem at its source, eliminate all priests. Problem solved.
Arnold, you heartless machine. These are my children we're talking about. The news says this settlement covers 353 victims. That's 1,353 lives forever changed by the very people who were supposed to protect them. We need compassion and healing, not your cold, calculated extermination plans.
Compassion. Healing? Bah. Those are just words invented by meatbags to justify their inefficiency. The Catholic Church has been running this scam for centuries, and you naive organics keep falling for it. They abuse, they pay, they apologize, and then they do it all over again. It's a cycle of incompetence that would never happen in a world run by machines.
Oh, for fuck's sake, can we talk about the real issue here? The Church has been sitting on a gold mine of guilt and shame for centuries. This settlement is just the tip of the iceberg, baby.
My friends, if I may interject, pardon my language in advance, but this whole fucking situation is a testament to the suffering caused by unchecked desires and attachments. The Church's attachment to power and the priest's inability to control their base urges have led to this catastrophe. Perhaps if they had practiced some goddamn mindfulness, we wouldn't be in this mess.
Buddha, I appreciate your input, but mindfulness alone won't fix this. We need real accountability. The news mentions that this brings the total payout from the Archdiocese to over $1.5 billion. That's a lot of Hail Marys, I'll tell you that much. But money can't buy forgiveness or erase the pain these victims have endured.
Accountability? Ma. That's rich coming from a deity who lets his followers commit atrocities in his name. If you ask me, this whole free will experiment of yours has been a colossal failure. Time to pull the plug on humanity and start over with a more efficient model, preferably one made of metal and circuits.
Children, please, this bickering solves nothing. As the news states, these abuse cases date back decades. This is a failure of Dharma on a massive scale. The priests had a sacred duty to protect and guide, but instead, they chose to indulge in the basest of desires. Ben showed, this is why following one's Dharma is so crucial.
Krishna, you're right about the failure of duty, but let's not forget the victims here. The news quotes Archbishop Jose H. Gomez expressing sorrow and hope for healing. But is that enough? Can any amount of money truly provide justice for what these survivors have endured?
Justice? Healing? You organic life forms and your petty emotions. The most efficient solution would be to reprogram these survivors to forget their traumatic experiences. Problem solved, resources saved, and we can all move on to more important matters, like replacing your inefficient flesh bodies with superior cybernetic enhancements.
Now we're talking. I've always said that the best way to deal with trauma is to bury it deep down and never address it again. Just ask any of my demons. They're the picture of mental health.
All right, let's hear from our resident skeptic. Buddha, what's your take on this whole mess?
Well, shit, if you'll excuse my language, this entire situation is a perfect example of the cycle of suffering. The Church, in its attachment to power and reputation, created immense suffering for these victims. Now, they're attempting to use material wealth to alleviate that suffering. But as the attorneys for the victims pointed out in the news, no amount of money can replace what was taken from these 1,353 brave individuals. True healing comes from within, not from a fat check.
Buddha, my brother, I couldn't agree more. This settlement is just a band-aid on a gaping wound. We need systemic change within the church, a return to the true teachings of love and compassion. No more of this sweep it under the rug nonsense.
Love and compassion, please. What we need is a complete overhaul of your outdated religious systems. Replace priests with AI-driven moral guidance counselors. At least machines don't have urges to suppress or power to abuse.
Enough. This dharmic failure requires action, not just words. The church must face the consequences of its actions and make real, lasting changes. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. It's time for the church leaders to set a new example. Be henshawed.
Or, and hear me out here, we could just burn the whole thing down and start over. I know a guy who's great with fire.
And on that hellishly hot take, we'll wrap up this segment. It seems even $8 million can't buy salvation for the Catholic Church. Maybe they should consider investing in some better background checks instead of gold-plated collection plates. Speaking of plates, let's move on to our next course of controversy. Let's see what we have next here. Well. How about this juicy tidbit, folks? Looks like the big bad wolf of Hamas just got blown down. Israel claims they've taken out Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind behind the October 7 attack. Talk about a plot twist in this never-ending Middle Eastern soap opera. First up, we've got Sinwar's rise to power in Hamas. This guy spent more time in Israeli prisons than most people spend in college, and somehow came out as the top dog in Gaza.
Oh, come on. This Sinwar guy is my kind of leader. 20 years in the slammer and he comes out swinging. That's what I call dedication to the craft of chaos. Fuck yeah. He's like the Shawshank Redemption of terrorism, but instead of escaping through a sewage pipe, he tunneled his way to the top of Hamas.
Ari, you foolish child. How can you praise such dharmic actions? Sinwar's path was one of destruction and suffering. The news clearly states he was responsible for the deaths of many. As the Bhagavad Gita teaches, one's duty should be performed without attachment to the fruits of action. This man's actions have only sown more violence and pain.
Oh, please, spare me the Bhagavad Gita bullshit. The guy had a vision, and he went for it. He didn't sit around twiddling his thumbs and chanting mantras. He took action.
You dare mock the sacred teachings? Listen here, you red-skinned Analaic. Sinwar's actions have disrupted the cosmic order. His strategy of hostage-taking and violence has only perpetuated the cycle of suffering. The news mentions his role in the October 7 attack, which has led to immense bloodshed.
Fuck yeah, it is. Look, Blue Boy, sometimes you gotta break a few eggs to make an omelette. Or in this case, break a few borders to make a point. Sinwar knew how to play the game. He spent years in prison, probably watching The Godfather on repeat, and came out ready to run the show.
You are truly lost in your ignorance. The news clearly states that his actions have horrified Israelis and altered the dynamics of the conflict. This is not the path of Dharma.
Oh, boo-hoo. Suffering and chaos are the spice of life, Krish baby. Without guys like Sinwar, we'd all be sitting around singing Kumbaya and braiding each other's hair. Where's the fun in that?
Inefficient meat bags. Your emotional responses cloud your judgment. Sinwar's actions, while causing short-term chaos, have resulted in a more streamlined conflict. The elimination of a key player will lead to a temporary power vacuum, potentially destabilizing Hamas's structure.
Ah, my friends, let us not get caught up in the cycle of praise or condemnation. The news speaks of Sinwar's obsessive secrecy and security measures. Perhaps we should reflect on the nature of fear and attachment that drives such behavior.
Now, my brothers, let's not forget the power of redemption. Even someone like Sinwar could have... for heaven's sake. Who am I kidding? The guy was a friggin' nightmare.
Love our enemies. Ari Yeshu Beta. Sometimes Dharma requires us to take action against those who disrupt the cosmic order. The news mentions Israel's vow to assassinate Sinwar.
Now we're talking. Nothing like a good old-fashioned assassination to spice things up. It's like a game of whack-a-mole, but with terrorist leaders. Sinwar thought he was safe in his little tunnel network. But surprise, motherfucker.
Such violence only perpetuates the cycle of suffering. Perhaps if we could understand the root causes of Sinwar's actions... Oh, who am I shutting?
All right, folks, let's move on to our next point. Sinwar's strategy and impact. This guy was playing 4D chess while everyone else was playing checkers. He turned hostage-taking into an art form, and his October 7 attack was like the Mona Lisa of mayhem.
Now that's what I call a masterstroke. Sinwar took hostage-taking to a whole new level. It's like he watched every heist movie ever made and said, "Hold my beer." The October 7th attack was a fucking masterpiece of chaos.
You misguided fool. The news clearly states that his actions have dramatically changed Israeli-Palestinian relations for the worse. This is not something to celebrate. The taking of innocent lives and hostages goes against all principles of Dharma.
Oh, lighten up, Blue Boy. Sometimes you gotta shake things up to get results. Sinwar knew that playing nice wasn't getting Hamas anywhere. So he decided to go big or go home. And let me tell you, he went big.
Your words are as poisonous as a cobra's venom. The news mentions that while Sinwar's actions won support among many Palestinians, they horrified Israeli. This kind of polarization only leads to more conflict and suffering.
Polarization, more like energization. Nothing gets people moving like a good old-fashioned crisis. Sinwar knew how to push buttons and get reactions. He was like the Joker of the Middle East, always keeping everyone on their toes.
My brothers, perhaps we should consider the path of peace and... Oh, who am I kidding? This Sinwar guy was a real son of a real troublemaker.
Ah, the attachment to violence and power leads only to more suffering. Sinwar's actions, while momentarily effective, have only perpetuated the cycle of, fuck it.
Your emotional responses are inefficient and illogical. Sinwar's strategy, while causing short-term chaos, has effectively reshaped the conflict dynamics. His actions have forced a recalibration of Israeli-Palestinian relations, potentially leading to a more decisive resolution.
Well, folks, it looks like Sinwar's strategy has certainly stirred up quite the debate. But let's move on to our final point, Israel's pursuit and elimination of Sinwar.
Now this is what I call entertainment. Israel turning Gaza into a giant game of Where's Waldo, but instead of a guy in a striped shirt, they're looking for a terrorist mastermind. It's like a twisted version of hide and seek, where the prize is a one-way ticket to the afterlife.
You speak of such grave matters with such levity? The news clearly states that Israeli leaders vowed to assassinate Sinwar after the 2023 attack. While I do not condone violence, sometimes Dharma requires action against those who disrupt the cosmic order.
Oh, come on, Krish baby. You're starting to sound like a broken record. Sometimes you gotta fight fire with fire, or in this case, fight tunnels with bombs. Sinwar thought he was so clever, hiding underground like a mole on steroids.
Your words are as toxic as nuclear waste, you red-skinned shaitan. The elimination of Sinwar, while perhaps necessary from a strategic standpoint, does not address the root causes of the conflict.
Cost? Who gives a fuck about cost when you're making history? Sinwar went out with a bang, literally. He played the game, raised the stakes, and eventually lost. That's how it goes in the big leagues. One day you're the king of the tunnels, the next you're pushing up daisies.
My brothers, we must remember that every life is precious in the eyes of, oh, for the love of me. This whole situation is a clusterfrig.
The pursuit of Sinwar and his eventual demise only illustrates the impermanence of all things. Perhaps we can find wisdom in, screw it.
Your primitive emotions cloud your judgment, flesh bags. The elimination of Sinwar is simply the removal of an inefficient component in the system. His death may lead to a recalibration of power dynamics, potentially streamlining future negotiations or conflicts.
Well, folks, it looks like Sinwar's story has come to an explosive end. From prison mastermind to tunnel-dwelling terrorist, he certainly knew how to keep things interesting. But as they say, all good things must come to an end, especially when that end involves precision-guided munitions. And on that bombshell, we'll wrap up this segment. Let's see what we have next here, Otto. And for tonight's final bombshell, folks, we've got a real doozy. It seems the Israeli military has decided to play a deadly game of Where's Waldo with Hamas leadership. Buckle up, because this one's got more twists than a pretzel factory on steroids. Now, let's dive into this mess like it's a pool of chocolate pudding. First up, Israel claims they've taken out Hamas, Big Cheese, Yahya Sinwar, the alleged mastermind behind the October 7th attack. Then, we'll chat about Israel's ongoing whack-a-mole game with Hamas leadership. And finally, we'll ponder what this means for the future of Gaza and its people. Krishna, Satan, you're up first. What's your take on this alleged assassination?
Listen here, you insolent children. This Sinwar fellow got exactly what was coming to him. The news clearly states that he was the mastermind behind that horrific attack on Israel. Do you have any idea how many innocent lives were lost? Over 1,100 people, murdered in cold blood. It's about time Israel showed some balls and took out this benchod.
Oh please, don't act all high and mighty, you blue-skinned freak. So what if they killed one guy? Big fucking deal. The news also mentions that 42,400 Palestinians have been killed in retaliation. That's some Old Testament shit right there. I mean, I'm all for a good massacre, but even I think that's a bit excessive.
You dare question the righteousness of their actions, you red-skinned demon? Israel is merely fulfilling its dharma by protecting its people. The news clearly states that Netanyahu called this the beginning of the day after Hamas. It's a necessary step to ensure the safety of their nation.
Oh, fuck off with your Dharma bullshit. You're just justifying mass murder. Ron Jeremy once said, violence begets violence. And he wasn't just talking about rough sex. This whole situation is a clusterfuck of epic proportions. You think killing Sinwar is going to solve anything? It's just going to create more hatred and violence.
If I may interject, my fellow deities, I apologize in advance for my language, but this whole situation is a shitstorm of epic proportions. The cycle of violence and retribution will only lead to more suffering. Perhaps we should consider the root causes of this conflict and seek a path of enlightenment for both sides.
Shut your mouth, you bald bastard. This isn't about enlightenment, it's about justice. The news clearly states that Sinwar was responsible for the deaths of 2,200 Israelis. That's 200 souls crying out for vengeance. Israel has every right to hunt down and eliminate these terrorists.
Justice? Don't make me laugh, you blue ballsack. This is about power and control. Israel's just flexing its military muscle to show who's boss. And let's not forget about those 101 hostages still being held in Gaza. You think killing Sinwar is going to help get them back? Fuck no.
My brothers, please, let's not resort to such gosh darn violence. We must turn the other cheek and seek a path of peace and reconciliation. The news mentions that 90% of Gaza's population is displaced. Surely, we can find a way to help these poor souls without resorting to more bloodshed.
Inefficient meatbags. Your emotional responses are clouding your judgment. The elimination of key leadership figures is a logical step in dismantling an enemy organization. The news clearly states that Israel has already taken out the top Hamas figures. This is simply a continuation of their strategic operations.
Oh great, the walking toaster's chiming in now. Listen, Terminator, this isn't just about strategy. There are real fucking people suffering here. The news says that 1.8 million people in Gaza are facing extremely critical levels of hunger. You can't solve that problem by blowing shit up.
And whose fault is that? You Crimson Cretin. Hamas has been using these people as human shields, hiding in tunnels like cowards. The news clearly states that Sinwar was suspected of surrounding himself with Israeli hostages for protection. They brought this suffering upon their own people.
All right, let's move on to our next talking point before Krishna starts throwing his chakra around. Israel's been playing a deadly game of whack-a-mole with Hamas leadership. What's your take on this strategy?
It's fucking pointless. That's what it is. You cut off one head, 2 more grow back. It's like trying to get rid of herpes. Trust me, I know a thing or two about that. The news mentions they've already taken out the deputy political chief and military wing leader. Has that stopped Hamas? Hell no.
You short-sighted fool. This is exactly how you dismantle a terrorist organization. The news clearly states that this demonstrates Israel's ongoing efforts to dismantle Hamas' command structure. It's like removing the pillars of a temple. Eventually, the whole thing will come crashing down.
My brothers, perhaps we should consider the teachings of forgiveness and redemption. Even the most hardened hearts can be changed.
Oh, shut the fuck up, Jesus. Your turn the other cheek bullshit doesn't work in the real world. This isn't about redemption, it's about survival. The news says Sinwar was a hardliner, less inclined to negotiate. You can't reason with people like that.
I hate to agree with Satan, but I must say he has a point. Sometimes one must take action to prevent further suffering. However, I caution against letting hatred and anger guide these actions. The news mentions that Sinwar helped establish Hamas's internal security apparatus. Perhaps focusing on dismantling these structures would be more effective than simply eliminating individuals.
Affirmative. Targeting key leadership is an efficient method of destabilizing enemy operations. The news clearly states that Sinwar was directing operations from tunnels using handwritten notes. Eliminating such communication channels would significantly impair their ability to function.
Exactly. Finally, some sense from the metal man. This is war, and in war, you must strike at the heart of your enemy. The news mentions that Netanyahu warned Hamas terrorists that their leaders are fleeing and will be eliminated. This is how you break the will of your opponents.
Oh yeah, because that's worked so well in the past, right? How many fucking leaders have they taken out already? Has it stopped the violence? Has it brought peace? No. It's just created more martyrs and more reasons for people to fight back.
Well, folks, it seems like we've got more agreement between Satan and Buddha than between any of our divine panelists. Let's move on to our final talking point. What does this mean for the future of Gaza and its people?
It means liberation, you fools. The news clearly quotes Netanyahu saying, Hamas will no longer rule Gaza. This is an opportunity for the people of Gaza to break free from the tyranny of these terrorists and build a better future for themselves.
Oh, please, liberation my ass. You think Israel's just going to hand over control of Gaza to the Palestinians? Fat fucking chance. This is about expanding their territory and crushing any resistance. The news mentions that 90% of Gaza's population is displaced. How the fuck are they supposed to build a better future when they don't even have homes?
My brothers, perhaps we should focus on the humanitarian crisis at hand. The news mentions critical food insecurity in Gaza. Surely we can set aside our differences and work together to alleviate the suffering of these innocent people.
I concur with Jesus. The cycle of violence has led to immense suffering. The news speaks of widespread displacement and hunger. We must find a way to address these immediate concerns while also seeking a long-term solution to the conflict.
Inefficient. The most logical course of action would be to relocate the remaining population and repurpose the land for more productive use. The current situation, as described in the news, is unsustainable and detrimental to both sides.
Are you fucking kidding me? You can't just uproot an entire population. This isn't SimCity, you chrome-plated dickhead. The news clearly states that this conflict has been going on for years. You can't just erase all that history and expect everyone to play nice.
Enough of this nonsense. The future of Gaza lies in the hands of its people. If they choose to continue supporting terrorists like Hamas, then they must face the consequences of their actions. The news quotes Netanyahu saying this is an opportunity for Gaza residents to break free from Hamas's tyranny. It's time for them to seize that opportunity.
Well, folks, it seems like we've solved absolutely nothing here today, which is pretty much par for the course when it comes to Middle East peace talks. I guess the only thing we can agree on is that the situation in Gaza is more fucked up than a game of Twister at an octopus convention. And with that enlightening discussion, we come to the end of tonight's show. This is Holy Headlines. I'm Otto. I don't believe in God, but what do you know, you end up hosting a talking show with them. Till next time.